If you haven't been able to tell by now, we really like pigs. And we don't just raise pigs for our pleasure, for our meat source. We also raise pigs for breeders and feeders for other families. And when we've got this many pigs, we've got breeders, we've got feeders, we've got our own stock. It takes a lot of feed to get these guys full at the end of the day. We have many ways that we try to reduce our feed costs. One is by feeding a simple feed ration of corn and soybean meal and mineral. The other is by putting them on pasture like this, so that way they can forage for grass. We've also called our local bakeries to try to get any food scraps they will give us. One of the most cost-effective and easiest methods that we've had for reducing our feed costs is by growing our own grain. Earlier this year, we planted soybean and corn for our pigs. This may look like a brown jumbled mess, but there is a lot of soybean in there. And this right here is what it looks like. This is a few stalks of soybean. There's a ton of this. Not too sure how long this is gonna take. This is the way we are saving money to feed our pigs. At first I was using these little clippers, but they were kind of sticking on the stalks and they weren't working very well. So I figured out that you can actually just pull them from the root and then shake out the dirt. That's much easier. You might be saying to yourself, well, Zach, why don't you just go hop in the truck and run over to the feed mill and pick up a bag of soybean meal for $17. The knowledge that I'm getting from doing this is incredible. This was the first year I grew anything, whether that was in the garden or that was like this in grain production. I threw myself into it. It's worth knowing. And to plant this seed, you know, it didn't cost me very much, but to harvest it, the only thing it cost me is my labor, which to me is free. It's actually important to me to be gaining this kind of knowledge because God forbid that something happens in our food system, our very fragile food system collapses. I actually have a way to feed my pigs that is always revolving. These seeds can be planted next year and we can redo this cycle over and over again. This year is a bit of a test. I planted as much soybean as I possibly could. I planted as much corn as I possibly could because I wanted to see just how much I get from that, how much per acre can I harvest. Well, we've gotten pretty far. This is actually going way faster than I expected. To be honest, I was kind of dreading having to harvest this soybean, but it's actually going pretty well so far. I'm sure I may regret what I just said when I have to actually shell out all the beans by hand. We've got the back of the Polaris pretty full. Let's go run it up to the shop. I'm gonna put it in the shop because I have a concrete floor. We have nice airflow. It'll dry out a little bit more, and then we'll come back, harvest all the rest of this. I don't know if you can really see it, but these pods break open extremely easy. We did just pull them from the root, so we are gonna let them dry out a little bit more because they'll break open even easier than that, but you can see that just throwing them in here lets the soybean loose out of the pod there. Should be pretty easy after a few days of drying. We'll have to pull the pods off. There's all the soybeans harvested. Well, picked at least. This is the easy part, and I already know that. It's gonna be much harder taking all the beans out of each one of those pods. We got a pretty full load on the back of the Polaris, as well as all the stuff back in the shop already. I will say, my prediction is that this isn't gonna be very sustainable. I think it's gonna be a lot of work to get that bean out. Harvesting is a decent amount of work. It's not terrible, it'll make you huff and puff, but the tedious thing is gonna be getting the pods out. So you can see we did a pretty big strip here in our garden. That's all harvested now. I'm guessing that soybean probably isn't gonna be the easiest protein on a small scale like this. Well, this is a small scale homestead. This is 26 acres and I only did a certain patch in my garden, but this is quite a few beans for one person to harvest. I just don't think it's gonna be very sustainable. I think I'm gonna need to find another protein source to grow. I think the corn's gonna be really good. I think that's gonna be easy to harvest, easy to shuck, because we're gonna have a shucker that we're gonna use. Soybeans, we don't have a thresher. They're really expensive. I have looked at building one, so if it comes time where I want to actually build one, I think this could be sustainable, but my prediction so far, before I even start shelling the beans out, is that this probably is going to be way too much work for the reward. Now that we've harvested all the soybeans, it is time to shell these. As you can see, I've already done quite a few of them. I wanted to get the hang of it before I put it on video, so I can at least give you guys some good knowledge on what I think the easiest way to do this is. We've got our massive, massive pile of soybeans, which are still on the stalk. You need to get them off the stalk into this bin, where I'll probably let them dry out a little bit more off the stalk, and then we will start to trample them to break the soybeans open. So the best way I've found is you take your stalk, basically you make a circle with your hand and you just push it off. Sometimes the end of the stalk breaks off, sometimes it doesn't, and then you toss it to the side. I always grab the butt end of the stalk because that's the strongest, least likely to break. And this method's actually working pretty well. I have seen some videos, and it's kind of interesting because most of the videos you look at on YouTube if you want to harvest soybeans on a small scale are videos in like Africa or something where all the women are harvesting the soybeans. It's pretty interesting. I haven't found very many videos in the United States, so maybe this is one of the first ones. But in those videos, what I saw was they would grab a big chunk of them and they would basically smack these on the ground. The problem I have with that is that the beans are gonna kind of go everywhere. If I had like some big huge box to do this in, or you know, some specific place where I could just sweep them all up, I think that would be easier, but I think for now, this is probably gonna be my easiest method. Who knows, that might change by the end of this video. This small batch of soybeans that we grew and harvested this year was really just a test. This wasn't like a way for me to save money. I just wanted to see if growing soybeans is gonna be sustainable. Like I said earlier in the video, I think corn's gonna be very sustainable to do on a smaller scale, on a large, smaller scale, because we are doing it to feed our animals. We aren't doing it for our own consumption, because of course, we would not need this many beans if it was for us. But soybean has a really good fat percentage and it has a really good protein percentage, so it's easy to add it to feed. Soybean meal is what we add into our feed for our pigs, and raw soybeans like this are actually much different than soybean meal. Soybean meal is the byproduct of soy oil extraction. There's not as much fat in the soybean meal as there is in this raw soybean. We do have to roast this to feed it to any livestock. Spent the last hour or so getting this whole bin of soybean pods together, and we aren't finished yet. I need to step on these and break them apart. We're gonna dump these soybeans out on this tarp, and I'm gonna get to stepping on them, hopefully separating the pods from the beans. That seemed to have worked pretty darn well. I think most of them shelled. I think it is gonna take a while to do all the beans. The soybeans are falling to the bottom. Most of the stuff we don't want stays at the top. Now that our soybean is pretty well picked through, there's still some of the pod left in there and a bunch of little pieces of stem and whatnot that I can't really pick out by hand. So at this stage, we need to take it over to the house where I've got a fan so that way we can winnow it. I'm up here on the porch. I got my fan. It's not the most powerful fan, but it should do the job. And then I got a big bucket below so that way I can drop this stuff from pretty high up. Well, that fan did a pretty good job. Anything that's left in here probably still has some beans in the pod. It was too heavy, so it didn't fly away. Now, now I'm out at our chicken butchering station using our propane heater here. And the next thing we need to do is roast these soybeans because they have a anti-nutritional factor in there that isn't good for livestock. They have a hard time digesting it. So heating it up, roasting it, gets rid of that. So we're gonna do all the soybeans like this and then we'll end up grinding them up. Now that we've roasted our soybeans, we are going to be grinding them up because it'll be a little bit easier for them to digest. We do the same thing with the corn. And to do that, we have our little grain mill. This one's made by Everygrow. I absolutely love this thing. It's really hard to find small scale mills and, you know, threshers and all that sort of thing. So when I came across this one, I was pretty happy with it, and so far so good. It comes with different size screens underneath, so if you want a really coarse grind, you can do that, or if you want something really fine, you can do that as well. We are gonna do a pretty fine mesh screen, and we'll just have to see how it does. I'm excited to see what this looks like. That looks exactly like soybean meal. Yeah, soybean meal isn't gonna be very practical for us to do on our own, on our farm for our pigs right now. That may change someday. Maybe we get some bigger equipment that we can, you know, hook onto our tractor to harvest things, because they do have small scale harvesters that would fit on the tractor. They're just thousands of dollars. So right now, not very practical. I think there's some other protein sources we could grow on our farm that would be a little bit more sustainable than doing like a soybean. That being said, it was pretty fun harvesting this, and the growing process was super easy. Just planted it in rows and left it alone. I didn't water it once. This is organic soybean meal, and that's extremely difficult to buy. I can't buy it anywhere near me. I'm sure you could probably buy it online, but not the easiest or cheapest thing to purchase. And doing it this way wasn't expensive at all. It was very cheap when you count in how much time it took me to harvest it, to shell it, to winnow it, to roast it, to grind it. It just really isn't going to be worth it. But I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.